Hello, everyone. Welcome to another version of our Rant. We've got a very special guest all the way from Alberta, Trevor. Thanks so much for joining us, man. Trevor's one of our agents out in Alberta, and as we're dealing with COVID, he brought a couple interesting points to us that I knew that he'd be the best person to comment on and share his unique perspective, especially in a market that like Alberta that has probably seen a little bit more challenges than some of the other places across the country. So Trevor, man, thanks for having us, dude. And I appreciate you dressed up. I should have put on a jacket.
It's all about this is my first time being on the old man yells at the cloud type thing. So you gotta look presentable first. Then I can start scaling it down in casualness. And eventually I'll be, like Chris. That's how I want to do it, right? An authoritative figure, and it doesn't matter about fashion at that point.
You have a little bit of a stubble growing. Are you trying to grow a big beard?
Well, I mean, the last time that we saw each other in person pre-COVID, it was at a couple of the investor seminars, and I had the full-fledged beard.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah, so I got rid of it because it's a little too hot, but it grows back and it's fun to play with.
What do your kids think of the beard? Do they like it? Do they not like it? Because they're a little older, right?
Yeah, my oldest son, he's kind of like whatever. He's kind of used to having it shaved or whatever. The youngest, he likes it when it's long, but he doesn't like it when it's pokey. So at this stage right now, he's just like, no, it's too pokey, man. You got to grow it out. Commit or don't commit, Dad. That's what he said.
But yeah, thanks for joining us. I know we were having a chat last week, and again, some of the challenges that you guys see there, may be very unique. And a lot of them are around just credit issues. And what we've been telling clients a lot recently is, look, going into a mortgage application now, we're adjusting the banks are adjusting how they're approving mortgages because of COVID. And they're asking significantly more questions to ensure that you're going to be able to continue to pay a mortgage. Also, on the other end of that, a lot of people have been affected. Their credit's been affected. They've lost their jobs. They're put into a situation that's unprecedented. This is everyone's first COVID for the most part. And we're all trying to figure out how to deal with it. And, tell me, you have some really interesting analogies. Like, what kind of experiences have you had with clients recently and conversations with them around all this?
The toughest thing when it comes to clients is them being honest, because a lot of times they feel really personal because credit is personal. We're lounging, we got this big pool behind us, and we're lounging by the pool, and we're saying, okay, the big pool, we're going to dive into the world of credit here. Let's get you into your swimsuit. And people are going to freeze, but we're going to give you this nice, comfortable towel that you're going to be able to put on, and you're going to sit down and we're going to start the conversation. We're going to dip our toes in the water first. We have to understand where you are in order to be able to guide where you need to be, depending on what's required for financing. And there are multiple different ways to get to the end product, but it's just having an honest conversation. That's what I'm finding is the hardest part at first. But there again, clients may be different. Some just kind of just, this is what's going on. But it's the ones that are a little bit more reserved because they feel embarrassed. We're not here to judge. We don't judge. I don't judge. It's, in Alberta, who doesn't have an R2, right? It happens. Like you said, the unique challenges in Alberta, oil collapse. Now we're in COVID. This is the first global pandemic I've been in. Yeah. So there are some new strategies that are being learned, but there's still some core base elements when it comes to credit. And
so do you find that in your particular market or the segment of clients that you've been working with, do you find that on the credit side, what are some issues specifically around credit that you've come across, like missed payments because of loss of job, just uneducated about how to properly manage their finances? And I'm not trying to say that in a negative way, just they're not aware of how to properly do it. Like, what's been the main issue or regular issue?
All of that. Everything that you just mentioned, there's no two situations that I've seen that are similar, but similar style situations seem to come in batches. The most recent files that I'm working on right now are simple errors on Equifax. And the credit bureau is coming back with misinformation and it's tanked a few of, the deals I'm still able to get done because we're able to go into a reactionary mode and get things done quickly, but solid preposition. They go shopping. Credit bureau is now stale. Pull a new credit bureau. Something was misreported, not the fault of the client. It tanks the credit score to the point where the lenders are like, no, sorry, this has to get rectified. So they're ready to write an offer. We have to jump into action. That's one. There are the other ones where people just don't understand credit. It's, it's there for me to use as income. And that's where coming back to the basics of credit is, well, it's income you haven't made yet. So there's a lot of education in either scenario. With the errors on Equifax, how do we deal with it when Equifax is saying, okay, well, if you could just fax me all that information or get your clients to fax it to us? It's like, well, hold on a second. Where do we get a fax machine? It's 2020. And at the start of the pandemic, even Staples, even the drugstore is like, no, you ain't using our fax. What do we do?
So definitely there's a lot of free credit monitoring services out there too, right? I think a lot of people misunderstand credit. One of the first questions we always get is, well, if you pull my credit, you're gonna mess up my score. It's like, well, that's not really how it works. There's a very tiny percentage of your score is impacted by pulling your credit. And the reality is it's a catch-22. I need to see your credit to advise you on your options. And without seeing it, like you said, I can go into an offer. And now that I pulled your credit at the last second, I realize, oh, wait, you have all these things that are incorrect that are now affecting your ability to get a mortgage. I had a conversation with someone this morning who's got a solid profile. At face value, there's no issues. But when we sent it into the lender, they pulled a different credit report. Instead of Equifax, they used TransUnion, and they found something that was incorrect. And now they're saying, we're okay with this deal, but you need to fix this first. And that might take 30 days or more to get it corrected with the credit company. So even if you're not getting a mortgage, I think just financial literacy and pulling a credit score for yourself and knowing where you're at any moment is a good practice. I always say, like, investing, reviewing your investments, you should be doing a mortgage or a credit review on a regular basis, annually at least, to know where you're at any moment. You never know when you need to access credit or borrow, right?
I'm all about free too. I mean, I list the company they have it. Equifax has it, TransUnion has it. You got to pay for the service, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of those for the score because, as you know, the score is never the same. There are so many Credit Karma there. I don't know if I can mention that on here. Will they come after us if I mention the actual company name?
Okay.
But
5 people are watching this.
and one of them is going to be working for the company. Hello, legal. Yeah, you might want to get in on this. No, they're operating and they're charging you for a service, but it comes down to breaking the steps and understanding. If you're using your credit properly as the proper tool, another analogy I'm big on it is I'm not going to take a Phillips screwdriver end and start hammering in a brad nailer. No, there's a specialized tool for it. Credit is a specialized tool. It's not a right. It's not income. And if you use it correctly, then the score is going to be secondary because we know with the proper patterns of behavior, you're going to have a great score. So back to your point, you can have people pay if you really want to know the FICOM score. If you want to pay the $30, but you can get it free from Equifax. You can get it free from TransUnion. You just have to wait for Canada Post to deliver it.
Yeah, it's a little slower.
Yeah, it's a little slower, so it depends on time frame. So as you're saying, with the annual review, if you're not looking for a mortgage, but just an annual review, get it for free because it's the information on there, not the score that we look at. When we look at the score, it's going to be an indication of what we're about to read.
Yeah.
And so once we start reading it, so let's forget about the score. If it's just a review, and let's take a look at the contents of the book because we know what the title is eventually going to be around based on.
What are some tips to help? Obviously, a great question would be, I want to improve my credit. What should I do? My credit score is from 300, I think, to 900. Generally, the banks want your score to be above 680 to access better rates and these sort of things. Let's say my score is 700, but I wanted to get it higher. What can I do, basically?
Dude, you said you wanted this to be a short conversation. What can you do? Well, that's kind of like ask.
One or two things. Let's just
Oh
stick
yeah,
with
okay. Yeah, it's like asking what's your best 5-year, man.
Yeah.
it's there's no one magic brush, but from what I've seen, an over use of credit, so going over a limit, is as bad as missing a payment.
Yes,
It
100%.
does the exact same thing, and it brings down the score. The difference being, well, actually now that Equifax has changed their reporting system, it's now showing a historical of how many times you've gone over limit. So if you're constantly doing that and not missing payments, well, it's the same thing. It's 6 of one, a half dozen of the other. So don't go over limit, and don't have too many cards. It's We understand, I understand the points, air miles, cookie
They
point.
give you T-shirts at the mall. Come on, man.
I know it's
Get the one T-shirt that says Visa on it. Of course, I want to sign up for 10 credit cards.
free branding.
Towel I saw one recently. It's crazy what people take for a credit card.
Little football that's going to deflate as soon as you get out of the stadium. It's like, oh,
I agree. I think personally, I don't understand, and I'm not saying I'm right or wrong here, but I don't understand having so many credit cards. I mean, I personally probably have two personal credit cards. They're both premium type travel points that I use depending on where I get the most value. One of them is very good for groceries. The other one is very good for travel. And I sort of use them together, and then I have a separate card for business. But I don't understand when I see a credit report, there's like 10, 12 cards, different store cards, different bank cards, and all of these things that will affect your ability to get some sort of credit potentially, especially if you're misusing them.
well, exactly. And without regulation in unsecured debt, let's call a heart here. There is no regulation in issuing credit cards, issuing lines of credit. And when there's no regulation, it's going to be the Wild West in the information that people are going to be receiving. And yeah, well, is this true and accurate information that you're giving me on this credit card? Oh yeah, sure it is. Yeah, right on. Just sign here. Where's the accountability? So what? And if people don't know any different, then we got to go back to basics on it. And even though we don't understand it, it's okay at this point. Let's see what define credit. And a wise person once told me, and I've mentioned it before, is it's money you have yet to make. So if you think of it in that aspect, it changes the whole tone. And okay, that means I got to pay it back. Well, yes, that's.
I think a lot of people, feel that credit should be used if you're using it wisely. Credit can be an asset. So the way I see credit is I have access to credit on a credit card, for example. I can use this credit card to get things like points and rewards and cashback and incentives and things like that, but I will pay it off at the end of the month. And in making that purchase on the credit card, in addition to all those rewards, I also have 21-day grace period. So for some, there could be a bit of a cash flow benefit as well. Other people will see credit as, I can't afford it. It goes on the credit card. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Life happens. Sometimes we need to carry balances on line of credits and credit cards. But I think a lot of people think this is something that I can't afford, but I can afford the monthly payment. And they fall into a trap where they bought all this stuff that is really not important, like, in my opinion, like a TV or things that you don't really need. Like you've got this big screen TV and you put it on your credit card because the payment's free for a year or whatever. And now you have very difficult time to pay that down and you accumulate these balances. It's difficult to kind of get yourself ahead of the game very often is what I see.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm in total agreement with that. And it comes down to who teaches us about this stuff, right? I mean, where do you learn? You can go on Google and you say, okay, well, how do I treat my credit? Most of it's going to be solicitation on getting credit. But once you have it, no one's really talking about how you should be maintaining it until it is too late. And it's like, well, no, where can we start to introduce this in an unregulated space? with regulations on mortgages right now, a person wants to get mortgages, we're licensed to give them true and accurate information because our lifeline, our way of generating income is on the line. So we are going to be dead accurate in every aspect.
Yeah.
With credit, yeah, there's when you don't have someone saying
Rant, the whole unsecured credit, unregulated to some extent world is crazy. I saw someone at a 30% loan, and there's all these restrictions on getting a mortgage, but getting unsecured credit. I saw someone with a $200,000 worth of unsecured credit. It's like, dude, you don't even make 50 grand. How the hell do you get this?
we're getting real now. Yes, it totally does come down to it. And because of, I'm not saying, oh, we're going to have to get, there has to be some kind of accountability of the person who is introducing this trade line. Just because you can, what is that from Jurassic Park? I love using it sometimes, just because, we're so busy wondering if we can do it. No one's asking the question, should we do it?
Yeah.
So that's where unsecured credit has to go is, yeah, you can, but should you? Who's there to give you an honest, should you do it? We're there when we're telling clients, you're overextending yourself on the mortgage payment. So should you be doing this? No, but it's still their choice in the end. But we're there to guide, saying, here's some possibilities of how it can go wrong. So yes, unregulation.
I find I'm just kind of looking at the clock, but kind of as an any note, where I find this kind of comes back to the mortgage side is very often we're doing refinances. With I've got 2 kids, you've got kids. As your life evolves, your financial needs change, and life could get more expensive. And sometimes you just need to borrow money, basically, right? Like we see a lot of that with clients and their evolution as a client in their life cycle. And sometimes they're carrying these balances. They have these car loans and all these other things. And just having that annual review could help you, if we were looking at a refinance, maybe I could transfer this $1,200 of credit payments into your mortgage and put together a savings plan so that now I've saved you over $1,000 of monthly payments and all kinds of money and interest. But let's replace that monthly obligation that you're already used to making with the savings component. So just because we're transferring debt to a mortgage, which is good because cash flow and rate, but I also want to force you to say and help educate you on how to properly use credit, maybe close some of these down. Having that annual review could be a very effective way to allow you to always be on top of your game and always be ahead financially versus waiting till the end of the 5 years. Sometimes there's a lot of value in those. And I generally am able to find some decent value in any conversation. Even if no mortgage transaction happens, it's just advice. There's some value through a basic objective conversation with someone.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. Operating within their existing budget that they already have. So if transferring of the debt, they're still in the same budget. They now get to control and direct where does that money go. And annual reviews. It could be something as simple. Well, never be embarrassed, I guess, is what I want to get out there. Never be embarrassed about your credit. There's nothing that can shock me when it comes to credit. Absolutely nothing. I've almost seen it all. I've seen someone in collections for $1. This was back, way back in the Bay days. $1. The guy was in collections for $1, and it tanked his score.
I had a.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say I had a silly situation where the client took a credit card with a big store. It was probably the Bay, one of those type of department stores. Doesn't matter. And I think he told me they offered me a $10 credit if I got the card to apply towards my purchase. And I was like, whatever. I was buying socks. So the socks were free or whatever. And the card had a small annual fee on it. And he's like, I never used it ever again. I literally got it in the mail and I discarded it and never used it after that. And when the renewal came back, I had moved address. And because it came with a renewal that I didn't pay, like the membership fee, I went to collections and they called me and was like, I didn't even know I still had that. I didn't know there was like a $10 annual fee or whatever it was. Yeah. And he had to dispute it, but it temporarily affected his score, which is what I'm going back to. Like, sometimes you just need to look at your credit and see where you're at, because there could be things you're not aware of. Or, if you have kids and you're giving a credit card to your kid to use with some budget, where this person, their kid sort of was running the whole tab on it and was impacting their ability to have a strong credit score. They didn't even know. So I think just have to have that review. It's kind of like a checkup. I think it's a little bit overblown that by us checking your credit or anyone checking your credit, your score will be severely impacted. What's going to impact your score is you missed your payment, or you're over your limit, or you have a high balance, or a lot of credit cards. Checking your credit is not going to go from an 850 to a 500. It's just not the case. It's not how it works.
Well, yeah,
so that's the main message I want to get out there.
Yeah, for us to come up with some sort of plan, because everything is beacon derivative with Equifax, with them dabbling into AI right now. It's becoming Minority Report, where it's more about the prediction of somebody foreclosing or missing payments on any credit that's given to them. We have to operate within that context and say, okay, if we go here, knowing how everything is looked at, how can we best advise you? We can't advise you the best without an honest discussion. And we have to give up our hangups on, okay, let's put on the robe. Yes, I'm going to be in that swimsuit. It's going to feel uncomfortable, but it's nice and cozy and warm. When you're ready to dive in, hey, go for it.
So, well, let's leave it off that. I like that analogy. So, let's have an open conversation about credit, have that annual review. And hopefully we can create that experience of I'm walking to a credit spa we'll call it, where you're provided with a robe on entry, so we can have a very sort of honest and comfortable conversation to put you in the best position. Because you're right, nobody wants to go to a party and start saying, "Hey, Trevor, so what do you think of that new Capital One credit card?" Like, no one's going into social settings and talking about these kinds of conversations. It's a little taboo. But I think having a conversation with a professional who doesn't care, is not here to judge you, can be a very helpful process for sure. So I appreciate being on here, Trevor. And let's kind of let's do a lot more of these, man.
Well, yeah. There's so much more that we can talk about and break it down. But yeah, let's keep it light. Let's keep it happy. Then we can get into the
after hours Vine Rant, where we get into some really crazy stuff.
Yeah, we've seen it all.
Cool. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.